the Fashion Feed podcast. This week I'm speaking to established fashion photographer Olivia Bossert, and she is the 10th guest on the podcast. Olivia approached me via Instagram for us to do a podcast swap, which I thought was a cool idea. So she has previously interviewed me for her podcast, which is It Starts With a Click, and I interviewed her for the Fashion Feed. Olivia is from Geneva in Switzerland, but currently splits her time between Cornwall and London. So we met in King's Cross on a sunny afternoon to record this chat, and I would recommend to press pause or go and grab a pen and paper if you are planning a shoot or you're even looking to become a photographer. Olivia covers so much information and top tips, so I say at the end that I was hanging off the edge of my seat when speaking to her, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. In this episode, we cover how Olivia grew up in a fashion-focused family, who were really supportive of her moving into photography, why she stopped shooting for 2 years, and what a typical day looks like for Olivia now. And it's focused around her dog, which I loved. Olivia's tips to prepare for a shoot, where to find a photographer that suits your brand image, how to take your own professional-looking photos if you're not quite at the stage of hiring a photographer yourself, things to consider when preparing for a shoot, and how to get into photography as a career. If you'd like to stay in touch with either me or Olivia, you can follow us at Elizabeth Stiles UK and at Olivia Bossert, and tell us what you think of this week's Fashion Feed episode. You can also subscribe to the podcast. It's totally free and means it will automatically land into your podcast inbox every fortnight, so you never miss an episode. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Testing. Cool. Yeah, I think it's working. Yay. So, welcome, Olivia.
Thanks for having me.
We've just booked out a room in London, so it's nice and quiet. We've got a little sweet jar that we promised we won't chew whilst recording. No. We just shoved one down before we started. So, today we've got Olivia Bossert. Is that right?
Yeah.
And we met on Instagram. We're Instagram friends, and you're a photographer. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I discovered photography when I was 15, roughly.
Yeah. And how old are you now? Do you mind?
I'm 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looking fresh.
Oh, thanks. I was 15, and I had always been really creative at school, but never really felt like I was a painter or a drawer or anything. Yeah, I just didn't really know what to do. And I was always really drawn to the fashion industry. Like, grew up with my mum, who was really obsessed with fashion. My dad, who sort of works for the fashion industry in an indirect way. He's a lawyer, and works for brands as a lawyer. And a grandma that's really into fashion, and magazines all over the house all the time. So fashion's always been a big part of my life. And then I also spent my summers in Ibiza as a child, and my godmother is actually a fashion designer in Ibiza.
Oh wow!
Who runs a shop out there. So it's kind of always been there.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know. You know when people ask you what you want to do when you grow up? I had no idea. I just knew that it was something creative, something to do with fashion. I had a go at thinking I was going to be a journalist, but I thought maybe I would go and work in magazines. And it wasn't until I was 15, probably almost 16, that I discovered Flickr, the OG Instagram. And I was doing some research for an art project I was doing at school, and just stumbled on this photo on probably a Google search, clicked on it, and found this girl's profile. And she had a about page on that profile, and I clicked it, and she was the same age as me. And I remember just being completely in awe of the fact that a girl my age had taken these beautiful photos, and I just couldn't believe that was a thing. Yeah. I was like, how have I not known about this my entire life?
How does she know about it?
Yeah, what is... And so I actually emailed that girl, and I asked her all these questions, and we became sort of pen pals. And I went and stole... My parents had a DSLR, a Nikon, and I stole that camera, and I basically never gave it back.
Yeah.
And taught myself how to use it and how to shoot, a lot of self-portraits to start with, and eventually asking sort of friends and friends of friends if they'd let me take their photo. And then eventually I finished school and I went to Falmouth University, which is where I moved to. So I'm originally from Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah, originally
all over the place.
All this, my entire childhood spent in Switzerland and Geneva, and then at 18 I moved to Cornwall to study my fashion photography degree. So I did that I did a foundation first, and I did a degree. So 4 years at uni, and then I ended up staying in Cornwall afterwards. So I've been living in Cornwall for 8.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and now I am coming to London.
Yeah.
So I'm part-time in London now and part-time in Cornwall. And yeah, it's been a really crazy up and down journey. Uni was a tough time where I was, coming out of sort of a difficult relationship, and then feeling like my inspiration was completely squashed by uni. Didn't actually stop shooting for 2 years after uni. I completely put the camera down. I had no interest in photography at all. And kind of felt like I'd lost a bit of a part of me because I thought that it was gone. And then one day it all just came back. It literally flooded back in. It was mental. And I've never stopped since. It's just been constant.
I like that you put it down when your inspiration was lost, because I don't think there's anything worse than seeing work that's forced.
Oh, yeah.
And my stepdad's a painter and he's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little bell on him. And he just says, I say, why don't you paint this and this? And he's just like, I can't, I'm not in the mood.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes he can be like not in the mood for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really scary thing to have happen when you think that you're going to go down a path and everyone knows you as that person who is the photographer. And I just didn't want to be that person for 2 years. It was really tough. I did other things, and now I was still indirectly shooting as well. I worked for a company, a children's clothing brand, for a year, and I was their photography coordinator. So I did actually shoot a little bit, but it was never for me, and it was never because I wanted to. It was always just because I can do this thing and I can do it well.
I can get paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the inspiration came back, that was the best feeling, and it was suddenly being inspired by something that I hadn't considered shooting since I'd finished uni.
Do you remember what it was that you shot?
Yeah. Oh, well, I was scrolling through a random photographer's blog. She's called Emily Soto. She's really talented. Her work's changed a lot. I'm sorry, my voice is going. Her voice has changed a lot in the last couple of years, actually. But at the time, it still is very feminine. It was very feminine and very floral. And I absolutely loved her work, and I just scrolled through her blog one day and I was just like, I want to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it kicked off again.
I was going to ask you who your inspiration was, and we were talking before whether it's like brands or people or...
Yeah.
So she's definitely one of them.
Definitely one of them. There's so many photographers whose work I admire. Paolo Roversi is someone I'll always love. Patrick de Marchelier, his work is amazing. Yeah. There's so many, and like brands wise, I love Chloe. I always love the campaigns that Chloe do.
Why is that? What do you see in them that...
They're very feminine and very warm, and it's slightly bohemian, which I'm really drawn to. That comes from being in Ibiza so much as a child.
Yeah.
Free People is such an obvious one, and I think a lot of people say that they love Free People, but I really do.
Yeah.
I really do.
There's a reason why people say that they've got good stuff, is because they do.
Yeah, exactly. So I love all their campaigns. I love Mango campaigns.
Yeah. They're similar, aren't they? Quite soft and feminine.
Yeah, it always goes back to that sort of soft and feminine vibe, slightly bohemian-y, a bit hippie sometimes, by the beach or on location most of the time. And if it's in studio, it's very natural and very soft studio settings, almost a bit film looking. Like I do shoot a bit of film sometimes.
Yeah.
So things
I feel
like
it's
that.
coming back in fashion, isn't it?
It totally is. Well, more and more the industry is going towards very raw, unedited, like visibly retouched.
Yes.
There is still there is retouching still going on, but it's very minimal.
You've got to sell the product, haven't you?
Yeah.
Like
creasing and
yeah, exactly. And like if a girl's got a massive spot on her face, like they don't want that, or she's got huge bags under her eyes because she didn't sleep the night before. Like, there's things like that that I think are being removed. There's less and less of a trend of that really plasticky looking skin now, which I don't like. I don't actually like retouching that much, so it's a great excuse for me to not have to do it.
It's not on trend, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it's not trendy.
Yeah. So what does a day look like for you if you're half in Cornwall, half up here? Do you kind of do your shooting up in London and then edit when you're back at home, or?
Bit of both. I work in both places because I've got clients in both places now. At the moment, London is obviously quieter because I'm still building myself up here, but I am shooting a lot when I'm in London, mainly just portfolio work because I've got access up here to the showrooms and the PR agencies and the stylists and the models and the hair and all the makeup. The whole industry is here, really. But in Cornwall, I've already got a lot of clients as well, so I shoot down there a couple times a month for, you know, various things, and sometimes even just headshots for people just through word of mouth and stuff like that. In terms of a typical day, there isn't really a typical day, but I structure my day around my dog.
Okay, why not?
Which sounds ridiculous, but we got my dog 2 years ago.
Yeah, tell us what it is. Go on.
He's a little black cocker spaniel called Milo. It's very cute. If you like dogs, he's on my Instagram all the time. And in a weird way, he breaks my day up really nicely, and I kind of structure the way I work around him. If I'm not shooting, days are completely different. But if
they're a write-off.
they're just shoot and nothing else. But if I'm at home and I'm doing like admin or editing, I tend to get up around 7 and I'll get ready and I'll work from sort of 7:30, 8 till 10.
Yeah.
And I'm super productive in that hour and a half, and I actually get the bulk of my main stuff, got to do stuff, in that hour and a half. And then I'll take him out for a walk, normally for about an hour, from 10 till 11 or 10:30 to 11:30, and then come back and work again till about 2. And that tends to be more of a less super focused time, a bit more of a creative time. So I do a lot of my editing in that hour, or if I've got to write something, I'll do it then. Or if I need to do some research, like just before coming here, I was doing a ton of research on picture editors, magazines and stuff like that. So that's just scrolling through LinkedIn and writing people's names down and figuring out their email addresses if I have to do that. Yeah. So that's kind of that hour. And then I actually very often stop working around 2. I'm very unproductive
post at lunch.
It's the 2 to 5 I'm not very good in.
Same.
Sometimes I have a second wind from like 5 till 7.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
it's like you're describing my day. This is
there
weird.
we go.
I like that you have like almost tracked your energy levels, and then you're like, I'm really awake, and that's one of the reasons kind of why people leave jobs, because I'm, like I said, I can wake up and start working almost straight away. I'm really awake. But then it was almost like this guy was paying me to work from 9 till 5. And I was like, we've already lost 2 hours of my productivity, and the last 3 hours that you're paying for me, I'm barely doing anything, to be totally honest. It doesn't make any sense.
No, I'm completely the same. Like when I was working in that job, I definitely would get super productive in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, I mean, and this is most people, I don't think that most people work a full 8-hour day. I don't think it's actually possible for the human to do that.
I think the attention span now is less than a goldfish for a human. It's like 6 seconds or something before you pick up the phone, or even, you know, if you pick up your phone to look at the time, but you see a message and then you reply and you're like, I still don't know all the time.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of how I structure my day, and it works really well for me, and it's productive. There are definitely days where I feel like, I haven't done enough, or I've slacked off, and I don't. That's just how it feels, because
you might not have got through your ridiculous to-do list that you set yourself that nobody would get through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then shoot days vary completely. You know, sometimes a shoot will be 1 hour with just a model who's coming in for a quick test. Sometimes it will be 4 hours, so I'll just go out for half the day, and then I'll edit in the afternoon. And then other days it's, 8 till 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock at night, or depending on when the light is good, we might shoot into the evening to get golden hour. So very fluid.
And for any small brands that are listening, and they might have booked a shoot potentially with you.
Yeah.
How would you suggest that they kind of get prepared for that? Because it's something that probably a lot of people haven't done before.
No.
If they come from, I don't know, a law background or a PR background, but they've decided to set up a fashion brand, there's things that they would never think about.
No, it's a big process, and it's a long process. I don't think people realise how long it takes to plan a photo shoot, from sort of day one to day finished photos delivered in your inbox. I think the first thing to do is, and I'm sure that you talk about this a lot, but know the brand that you want to create really well, know exactly what you need from the photographer before you even reach out to anyone. It's getting really clear on, do I need these images to be really bright and airy, or do they need to be dark and moody? Maybe start putting a mood board together that you can then send to the photographer that you end up, emailing. That will be really helpful for anyone who receives an email, because it's very hard to describe in words. I want light and airy photos, but what you think might be light and airy to me might be very different. So get on Pinterest and just make a mood board of what you would love your photo shoot to look like. Maybe spend some time looking at what other brands have done photo wise. Get on a bunch of websites, go on Instagram, look at your favorite brands, and like what are the elements of those photo shoots that they've got. Have they got 1 or 2 models? Are they shooting on location or in studio? And then think about what's going to suit your brand best. In terms of researching photographers, there are so many of us. But I do think it's really important to do the research and find someone who suits you best. And that, I think sometimes it's quite intimidating when people want to use someone who's nearby or in the same town, or I would suggest looking sort of further afield if that's going to be the right person for you. And there's absolutely no harm in reaching out to someone who, if you're based in Cornwall and you want a photographer in London, reaching out and asking how that could be a possibility, rather than just being like, well, I'm never going to be able to work with them, because you don't know.
It's not space.
It could be an option. So I think do a lot of research, find maybe a couple photographers and email them all and find out who you gel with, because you might have an idea of one person that you really like the sound of, or you love their portfolio, but then they take 10 days to reply to your email, or you don't get a good vibe from them. So that's really important. The relationship between the client and the photographer should be really strong. I feel like I try and become friends with all my clients, which sometimes business people are like, well, that's not a good idea. But I just find that because we're doing something so creative and it's so important for the brand, if we're not all getting along, if we're not all gelling and clicking, it's just not going to work. So
you want that day to be like as productive and as fun as possible. You can really see on a shoot
days
if you've had fun or not.
Oh, totally, and it is really fun. The shoots that do the best for me are always the ones where we're really relaxed. There's no stress. Everyone's just getting on with it and having fun. There's music playing. We're all enjoying it. So to that end, I would suggest a phone call quickly, just to go over, like, maybe once you've chosen the photographer you want to work with, before you sort of put down a deposit, hopping on the phone, talking through the ideas, what you want to do, and then seeing what their process is, because my process might be very different to someone else's process. So learn what their process is, ask them as many questions as you want, and then from there, that's where it gets really fun, because once you've booked your photographer and you know who you want to work with, your photographer will probably say, let's put a mood board together, let's start location scouting. They'll ask you whether you need models or how many models do you need. They'll probably, either you're working with a producer or they're producing it. I do most of the production on mine, so I'll go and scout models if we need to, or request packages from model agencies and find out how much they are, find hair and makeup teams and things like that. And then in terms of the shoot day itself, it can totally depend on what the brand is and how many looks they need shot, or is it going to be more than a few days? The photographer will be able to tell you how much you can do in a day. You can't do 150 looks in a day.
No.
Just going to put that out there. And it depends, if you're shooting e-commerce, you can do more, like maybe 30 looks is kind of pushing it, but it's a possibility. But then if you're shooting a campaign, you really don't want to be doing more than sort of 8 to 10 looks, because you need to be really focused and make sure they're, these shots.
It's quality over quantity.
Definitely. They're going to be your like prime amazing images to sell your clothes.
And where would somebody go to, like if you're saying there's lots of photographers, where would you go to find one?
Oh God, so, because I never look for photographers.
I suppose, yeah.
That's a good question. I think Instagram.
Are there directories or?
I'm not a part of any. There are websites like The Dots.
Yeah.
Which is a really good resource, and there are definitely photographers who put their profiles and their like portfolios up on those. Instagram is an obvious one, looking through hashtags, looking at maybe brands who are in a similar space to you and seeing who they've shot with. And I think you have to take yourself down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Asking recommendations, I think, is always a good way to go. I get a lot of work through just word of mouth, or people who've maybe worked with a branding agency and the branding agency suggest me, yourself sometimes, stuff like that,
Well, your work kind of sells yourself, I guess. Yeah. Especially for
Google.
brands. Yeah, they see you fit and.
Yeah.
And if somebody's not quite at the stage where they could potentially, I don't want to say like afford a photographer, but they might be choosing to spend their money on other things.
Yeah.
What are some tips for somebody to be taking their own photos?
Okay. If you can use a DSLR, use a DSLR, just because you'll get a bigger resolution. That being said, if you don't have one, iPhone, Android, whatever camera you have, I've seen someone use a Google Pixel camera the other day and it was incredible.
Yeah.
So don't be put off by what tools you don't have. Use whatever you've got. If you're wanting to shoot something that looks like you're in a studio, set a backdrop up facing a window.
Okay.
And have your model stand facing a window and you with your back to the window, and take your photos, with the window behind you.
Yeah.
That will light everything quite evenly, quite softly and quite beautifully. If you want more contrast, turn the backdrop to the side of the window and have, your model standing straight up next to the window to their side. That will the light will come into the side and make a bit more of a moody look. In terms of going on location, I do, or even in studio actually, having a mood board created beforehand with pose ideas, shot ideas. I do that. I go on set with pose ideas because there's nothing worse than getting into the middle of a shoot and being like, I don't know what I wanted to do. So we
especially
all
if you've got a model that turns up and they're like not overly confident.
And that is another thing, model agencies, if you want to maybe spend a bit more money on getting a good model, but you don't have a big budget, agencies do have new faces, new girls who are younger, who are more inexperienced, but who are the perfect model. They just might need a bit more direction and a bit more help.
So if you've got those poses set out ready for them,
that can work just as well. I think that's kind of most of my tips really. Is have a good look at other photography that you like. Keep it nearby while you're shooting so that when you go a bit blank you don't know what to do. And
have some bulldog clips.
Oh my god, all the bulldog clips. Make sure everything's fitting good. Shoot as much in camera as you can. Don't try and rely on being like, I'll put a filter over it later. Get it looking as nice as possible.
And I guess the next thing would be to say, when we were talking earlier about knowing what your brand stands for and what your values are within that, how do you put that across in a photo?
Knowing your colour schemes, I think, is really important.
Looking at your branding before you have a shoot.
Branding, so that you know that if one of your biggest brand values is to be sustainable, not necessarily going and shooting in an airport. Just things like that. Like trying to think really clearly about what are the brand values and what will represent that best in my images. Maybe it's being really diverse in your model choices, making sure you've got diverse bodies and different colours and all sorts of things going on. Maybe it's, I don't know, as long as you know your brand, I think you'll find it hard to go off completely, and because the person organising the shoot will probably be the person creating the brand or in charge of the brand in some way, shape or form. you'll know if you're going off completely.
Yeah.
And you'll know if your photographer is kind of going down a road that you don't want them to. That might mean they're the wrong photographer for you because they're not understanding your brand. So either reading them back in and showing everyone the mood boards again and being like, this is why we're doing this. These are our brand values. These are the, you know, the colours and the moods and the everything we want the people to feel when they look at the images. And then looking at the images you're shooting and thinking, is that what's happening?
Yeah, like, is there a gap and how to close it? I remember somebody gave me such a good piece of advice once when they said, rather than saying what you want, so, you know, what you were just saying there, is then having evidence behind that. So this is what I want and these are the reasons why I want it.
Yeah.
So if you did see a photographer sort of going off in the wrong direction, you can't be like, do this.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, let's go through everything again, and it just kind of softens any tension that might appear throughout the day, because it is a high pressure situation. There's a lot of like money on the line, there's a time pressure, there's a light pressure, and I mean, I remember the first photo shoot I ever went on, I just came home and burst into tears. I was like, that was so stressful. There's models everywhere, making sure you get all the looks.
Stressful, don't worry.
No. This was more of a high street commercial situation. And you know, there's deadlines to everything, and they're like, oh my god. But if, I guess, like you say, if you put realistic guidelines onto how many looks you can shoot, and kind of preparing a call sheet as well, I think would be a good idea.
Shot list is really important as well, knowing exactly what outfit needs to go with the other outfit if you're shooting in pairs, you know, what's going to look best together, having everything prepared in the night before, having everything steamed perfectly, you know, maybe even wrapped in plastic while you're transporting them so that they stay clean, things like that. Just the shot list is super important as well, knowing exactly, you know, does this outfit need to be shot standing up? Is this one going to look better cropped in? Do we just want details of this one? Because
I had no idea how much preparation went into it, and I think it was the night before that shoot where one of the model agencies said, oh, can you send the call sheet over to the model, and none of us knew what a call sheet was.
The photographer will do that. The photographer should be the one in charge of the call sheet most of the time, so that's something I would do normally a few days before. If it's a really big shoot, getting, you know, it's basically just a sheet of paper, a PDF with the times for everything, the addresses, contact numbers, the team members, the mood board on it if possible, things like that, so that everyone essentially knows what's going on and what times. And the model agencies need those they're quite important for the model agency, so they can the model knows where to go, because photographers don't have contact with the model directly until the moment they arrive on set. We're not supposed to communicate with the girls at all beforehand, so it's the only way that models know what's going on.
To go.
And they often don't find out until 5 p.m. the day before what they're doing the next day. So it's really important they have those and that it's all, you know, correct information.
And I guess, like, even things down to I'm just thinking out loud with what we thought was the model shoe size as well, and like finding that out beforehand, and whether they need a special hairdresser if they're mixed race, and you're like, oh my god, there's an endless amount of things. But I think it's good to know all of this now, which is why we're saying all the things. So I hope everyone's got a pen and paper.
That's what I mean when I say it takes a long time. There's a lot of preparation that goes into them, and it's weeks before you actually shoot most of the time. Don't think that you can plan a shoot in a week. Don't wait. Don't leave it to the last minute. I would say give yourself at least a month and a half to do all this preparation before the big day, because the more preparation you do, the better the shoot will go. The more you'll benefit from it in the long run. Because that is the point of the photo shoot, is to help you sell the clothes and the product, and to ultimately make more money because of the great photos. And if you do it all at the last minute, you won't benefit from them the way that you would have.
Have you ever had to reshoot something?
I haven't.
No.
I know that does happen, but normally that would only be, you know, if the weather went really bad and we had to either, you know, stop shooting halfway through, or we had to postpone, things like that. Or sometimes samples change. I've had a shoot a couple times where I've been working with a bigger brand, and we shoot the first sample, and then a couple months later the sample's changed and they've just changed the designs. We have to reshoot that item. But
and there's always things flying in on careers at last minute, and then like, we need to shoot this one as well. So I guess the other thing would be if you were on the flip side and you were looking to get into photography, because another side, there's two sides that you can talk about, really. I was thinking on the train, because the whole point of the podcast was one, to educate brands, and the other one was things that you can do in an industry if you can't design and draw. Like, I'm exactly the same as you. When I was at school, I knew I wanted to do something creative, but I couldn't almost execute it. Like, all the ideas were trapped in my head and didn't know how to get them out. So what would be your advice to people who maybe want to get into photography?
I mean, when I started, phone cameras weren't a thing. So that, I think today it's so much more readily available to everyone. It's much easier to get stuck into it, but that's the best advice I can give you, is get stuck into it. If you're inspired by being a photographer, grab your phone and go and take pictures of whatever you're feeling drawn to. It might be landscapes, it might be people, it might be still life, it might be doing like flat lays, whatever it is. Go and practice and do that. Get on YouTube. You could probably do 3 times the degree I did just by going on YouTube and watching all the videos and learning all the lighting and how to use your camera manually. If you really want to be a photographer, you should know how to use your camera manually completely. Don't ever rely on it being in automatic or anything like that, because you can get so much more out of the camera if you actually know how to use it. Don't get stuck up on needing the best camera or the best lens. Shoot with whatever you have, because genuinely it's whatever kit you've got. It's not going to make an impact. It's you that's going to make the impact, and you as the creative behind the images. Look at photography. Look at the greats. Go and study the Henri Cartier-Bresson and the amazing photographers that are out there, whether it's fashion photographers or really classic photographers. Julia Margaret Cameron was one of the first female photographers in the 1800s, and her work is still beautiful. So go and look at their work and see what they were shooting. Try playing some film, even if it's just going and buying a disposable camera from Boots and snap away on that, see what you get and have fun. I think that's the main thing, is just, I like to say, just cover yourself in photography. Just like let yourself just be
immersed in it.
In that world, and just see what comes out of it and what you're feeling most drawn to and what you're not feeling so drawn to, and focus on the stuff you're feeling drawn to.
What's your favourite thing to do?
To shoot? Oh God. I mean, if I could, I would spend all my time somewhere like Ibiza, where it's really hot and warm and sunny and beautiful by the sea, and those sort of beautiful locations.
And
Sunsets. Just, it's so cliche. I'm such a cliche, but I just love golden hour. And
I think when you go to Ibiza though, I came home sounding like an absolute knob, because everyone was like, how was it? I was like, it was amazing. It's so spiritual. Blah blah blah.
It is an amazing
Until you
place.
see those sunsets, you can't explain it.
Yeah, exactly. But then equally, I've obviously spent 8 years living in Cornwall, and that is beautiful.
And Switzerland's so cold. You've seen them too.
Yeah. So I'm surrounded. My entire world is surrounded by beautiful locations. So I'm very inspired by nature. So no matter what I do, like, I'm not inspired by London city life at all.
No.
Doesn't do it for me at all. I just want to get out and be in a forest or by the sea or on a beach or in a mountain or whatever. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really drawn to. My favourite places to shoot. If I can find an amazing location and go and shoot there, I'm happy. Happy. And with like pretty clothes, pretty dresses.
And so if sort of brands listening were interested in working with you, how would they go about doing that?
You can go to my website, which is oliviabossert.com, or my Instagram, which is just @oliviabossert as well. And the best thing to do is take a look at my website. If you feel like I'm a good fit, send me an email. It's info@oliviabossert.com, or there's all the contact information on my website. And send me over what you want to do and ask me how my process works. show me a mood board if you've got one, and I'll get back to you pretty quickly about whether I think I can help you, if I'm the right fit for you.
I was going to say that, like, if you feel not sure, I feel like you're the kind of person who will be like, I'm not right for you, but this person is, and point them in the right direction. I have a huge amount of friends who I recommend all the time for various projects who, like, for example, I'm not a very good still life photographer. If someone came to me and said, we want to do an e-com shoot of our shoes, I probably wouldn't do that. That's not my skill set. But if you want to go on location and shoot a lookbook in a really cool house, I'm your gal. And you've got a podcast as well, haven't you?
I do. It is for fashion photographers. So if anyone's listening who's a fashion photographer and wants to learn more, it's on hiatus at the moment because I'm taking a break while I get settled into living in London. But it's called It Starts With a Click. And you can find it on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, Spotify, and it's on my website as well. So if you want to go and listen to that, you were on it.
I was on it, so you can listen to me. And what made you start the podcast? Like, what's kind of the theme of it?
I do quite a lot of education for fashion photographers. I've got a blog, and the podcast is just a nice addition to the blog. I wanted to create a space where we can talk more openly about the fashion photography industry. It's quite closed. There's not a lot of open discussion on how things work in the industry. You don't really know how things work until you get in it, and then you're like, oh god, I'm learning as I'm going. So the idea is to be interviewing photographers, but also, I had one of my best friends on who's a website designer, talking about what are the key elements of a good website and how can we make our websites really strong. So it's sort of encompassing the whole career and looking at it from a very broad spectrum and what we can do to get the best jobs we want.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so interesting. I'm sat here literally hanging off the edge of my seat, like leaning in.
Thanks for having me.
And like Olivia said, you can get in touch with her, and I'll put all the contact details on the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.